Hello friends, welcome back to Belle's Library. I'm Heather, and today we are going to go ahead and run through my quarter two favorites, least favorites, statistics, all the fun stuff that happened within that 3 months. Although, was it that fun? I don't know. We're gonna find out in a sec. Before we do though, please get down below, click subscribe, and also my Goodreads, my Instagram, and my Storygraph are down there if you want to follow me over there. We can talk bookish on all of these different platforms. I'd really love to have you guys. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we're doing here. So instead of doing monthly wrap-ups, I started doing these quarterly kind of wrap-up deals, and they just work a little bit better, and I get to talk about some of the books that maybe I didn't get to talk about in vlogs or other things going on, and tell you guys a little bit about some of my favorite ones from these 3 months, some that I didn't like as much, and just a few stats for those people who really like to talk numbers. So this is going to be quarter two of the year, which is April, May, and June. Now, if you've been on my channel, you know that I was slumping pretty hard through these months, so it's kind of a light little wrap up here. There's not a lot to talk about. There is stuff to talk about, don't get me wrong, but compared to like my first quarter, which I will link for you guys if you want to check out how the first quarter of my year went, it is a drastic change, like night and day going on here. So first, let's just go ahead and talk about how many books I read in those 3 months. Now, my first quarter of the year, I read 54 books in those 3 months, which is a lot. Like that's a good chunk of books. That's, wow. I read 11 in the next 3 months. So, you know, some balance would probably be good, but apparently I just don't know what that is. Yeah, like I said, I had kind of a slump happening. So 11 books in those 3 months. My total number of pages that I read within those 3 months was 1,552. And I listened to 81 hours of audiobooks. So when I make this statistical information, I do not include page numbers if I listen to it. So that 81 hours, like if I actually calculated how many pages that was, it would be more than 1,500 pages. They're separate things, and that's just how I've been tracking it this year, which is, I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting and more enlightening, I guess, in certain ways, especially like looking through some of this. So I think to start, we'll go ahead and just run through each of the months and kind of how much I read within those months and some of my books that I liked and didn't like within each of the months. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with some of the numbers, and we'll get into kind of some of that more nerdy, you know, the number games, because that's fun. Starting with April. In April, I read 5 books. Decent chunk of books, right? 704 pages. So, I mean, that's honestly only like a couple books, I guess. So I probably did like, you know, 3 audiobooks and 2 regular books or something. And I listened to 34 hours worth. So that's, you know, a decent chunk of listening time, I guess. Not too terrible. My ratings were actually pretty good for this month. I read mostly books that I really enjoyed. I figured since I really didn't read very much in these 3 months that each of the months I would just kind of rank things, like what was my favorite book, down to what my least favorite book was, or the opposite way, I guess. We can start with the least favorite book. So my least favorite book of April was The Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. Now, having said that, I still really enjoyed it, and it was more like a 4.5 star read for me, so it was still a really good book, and I still liked it as a romance book. There's just like, it wasn't my favorite, like didn't get tons of butterflies, tinglies, and there was just like a couple things that kind of were like, meh. But overall, I thought it was really cute and enjoyable, and I was listening to it to and from work, and I liked that one. But still bottom of the pie compared to a few of my other books I really liked. The next one would be The Book of Cold Case by Simone St. James. I will say I liked Sundown Motel a little bit more than this one, but this one was still a solid 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed this one, and this is a really good mystery type book. I love this author. She kind of mixes in some like paranormal pieces into her mysteries, and I think it's really fun the way she does that. I don't think this one had quite as much of that paranormal piece to it, but she does a great job of setting up like 2 different timelines where you're following kind of this In this one, a cold case, kind of back in the day a little bit, and then we're also following presently where it's kind of happening again, and we're trying to figure out what actually happened and who did these killings. I think there's a couple of women that got killed. So it's been a little bit of time, obviously, since I read this one, so I've lost a few of the details, but there is a true crime blogger in here, which is always a fun thing to add into a book, so this one was good. Then I would say The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. She does wonderful sci-fi books that just kind of also feel a little warm and homey, and they're not just all about war and death and crazy stuff like that, which not opposed to that, but it's just kind of fun to have this as well. And we're kind of following this crew on this ship, and they're taking this long trek out to this planet to kind of take on this mission that they usually wouldn't take on, but they're going to make some good money and hopefully can make some upgrades on their ship, and it's a big opportunity for them. And so, you know, they're trying to expand, but oh my gosh, the characters were so fun, each very unique, and I just really enjoyed that piece of it. And they are all just kind of like a family within this crew on the ship, so it was a good ride. And then we have Catherine House, which I also really enjoyed, and I always forget the author for this one. I'm so sorry. I will put the screenshot so you can see it. But this one, we're following this girl who goes to like this college, but it's called Catherine House, and you don't have to pay for anything, but you also like basically are cut off from the world. You can't really talk to people outside. You just are there for the entire time that you're there, and there's definitely something else going on. Our main character kind of is starting to figure out, and yeah, it's definitely got some undertones of other things that are going on that, you know, are happening. But if you go to Catherine House and you graduate from there, a lot of times you end up in some very powerful, high-up job, and it creates people that are very important in the world or have a lot of money, which seems to always equate to the same thing for some reason. And then my favorite book for the month was And the Trees Crept In by Dawn Kurtage. Yes, that. This one I really enjoyed. It's kind of this weird horror book where we're following these girls who show up at their aunt's house, and the trees are slowly like creeping in, and the aunt's like freaking out about somebody in the woods and doesn't let them go near it, and like slowly you just feel like you're getting encased in this house and something is out there to get them. And there's also just some other odd themes going on. I do wish that I had read this one from a physical book, because I forgot that this one has this cool like effect as you're reading it. The pages get darker and darker, like the trees are like creeping in on you, which would have been fun. But I think I read this one as an ebook. It might have been an audiobook. I can't totally remember now. Did I listen to this one on audio? It might have been an audiobook. I don't know. Anyways, that one was really good. Apparently I have no memory from April, because that was too many months ago, and I have no memory. Now let's jump into May. May, I read 2 books, so really started kind of petering downhill, and I actually read 0 pages. I only listened to a couple of audiobooks. It was 22 hours total of audiobooks. That was it for May. I think, like, I've talked about this in my life update in a little bit. This is when we moved into our house. We just bought a house, a lot of stuff going on at work. I was starting to kind of get out of my preceptor phase and start working on my own. It's just, I was stressed, and I just couldn't focus. It just wasn't happening. We were doing a lot of stuff around the house, trying to get it fixed up and ready and what we wanted it to be a little bit more, and that's just where we were at. So I listened to the 2 books. I rated both of them 3.5 stars. Overall enjoyed them, but they weren't like my faves amazing. So one was Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour, which I was really bummed about because I really enjoy her books usually, and this one just like, it was good, but it just didn't tell enough of a story. It was a little too melancholy, too flat, so it was just kind of like, I was a little bummed. But we're following this girl, and she works at this place called Yerba Buena, and she's a little lost in her life, and she's trying to find herself, and she also meets this other girl, and there's like a little bit of a romance there, but it's mainly about her kind of finding herself in her life. And so if you like that kind of contemporary story, I mean, it's very well written. It's beautiful writing, I will say that. I felt like I needed just a little more kick to it. And then Spin the Dawn was my other read for that month, and this is by Elizabeth Lim. loved Six Crimson Cranes by her when I read it last year, so I wanted to read this other series. And this one, I can tell her improvement in her writing and her storytelling. So as much as like I enjoyed the story, it was very kind of basic YA type fantasy that just didn't do a whole lot more for me, but I still thought it was good. And we're following this girl who basically, she's like a seamstress, and she disguises herself as a man to go in her dad's place, who's crippled, to do this competition where she has to make these dresses for the future queen. I don't think she's called a queen though, I can't remember. But anyways, and she has to sew these dresses in this competition to win, but she technically as a woman is not supposed to be the high up in the household, so she has to dress like one of her brothers and kind of pull it off, so you have that kind of fun element going on. I loved the idea of these dresses being put together and, you know, that kind of visual piece to it, and we're kind of on a quest to try and find different pieces to go into these beautiful dresses, and it was a fun time. Now we're moving into June, and in June, my ratings were all over the place. I read 4 books. Well, I technically read 3 and I DNF'd 1. Within that, I read 848 pages, and I listened to 25 hours of audiobook. So kind of a split between the two, which was good. But yeah, like I said, my ratings were really all over the place. I had a DNF, I had a 3-star, I had a 4-star, and a 5-star. So my DNF was Star Daughter by Shveta Thakrar. Actually, I have that one. This guy right here. I have this beautiful, gorgeous edition of this. Like, oh my gosh, I just wanted to love this. But I made it like 75% in, and I was just like, I don't want to put this on anymore. I'm so annoyed by these characters. They are doing the most ridiculous, stupid things that like, nobody does these things. And it was just, oh my gosh, I was just tired of listening to the main character. I just couldn't do it. We're following this girl who, her mom is a star, but her mom left her when she was a kid to go back up into the heavens, and then she gets called home and has to be part of this competition, and it just, she didn't deal with any of her feelings around any of it, and when she did, it was just in like these weird ways that really just like, I don't know, it just did not do what I wanted it to do, unfortunately, and I just couldn't do it. I got to 75%, I was just like, no, we're done. Then I also continued in the Shadowhunters series. This is book number 2, City of Ashes, which I read for that month, and I am trying to work through these books, and I'm doing okay with them, but this was not my favorite of them. I noticed that the first book and the third book I liked, the second one, and I'm partially through the 4th one, I haven't liked as much, so I don't know. I don't know if I'm just getting tired of reading them or I just don't like the even-numbered ones as much, but I give this one 3 stars. In this one, we're following these shadow hunters that, like, basically they protect the world from vampires and werewolves and different beings like that, but also they kind of work together with them in certain ways, and they are kind of almost the lawmakers of this world, you know? They are the justice makers, and we're following a collection of them in New York City. Then I had A Darker Shade of Magic, which I reread for my 1 book or 1 week, 1 shelf challenge videos that I was doing, which I have, it's just buried in a shelf, and I'm not gonna go grab it right now, but I gave that one 4 stars again. I gave it 4 stars the first time. I overall enjoy the story. It's just nothing that like stands out as something amazing that I'm like super thrilled and excited about. But it's kind of interesting how you have these different layers of different Londons, and each one has a different type / amount of magic to it, and how much that magic is kind of consuming the world. And I think the characters are very interesting within the world. So I'm excited to continue in the series and see kind of where it goes. But yeah, that one I gave it 4 stars. And then my absolute favorite of the month, and probably my favorite out of all 3 of these months, is, let me grab it. Are you ready? Half Sick of Shadows by Laura Sebastian. Super surprised that I enjoyed this one quite as much as I did, but oh my gosh, I totally loved it. It's like this King Arthur retelling where we're following, basically King Arthur's father has died and he has to come back. He has been living in a different continent area, I don't know, different city area where like a lot of the Fae live for his entire life, basically, and he has to come back to Camelot and take the throne. But obviously, we have other people vying for the throne, and he has to kind of earn it. And we're following him and his friends and their journey to kind of do that. And we also get some flashbacks to while they're on this island with all the Fae and growing up there. And we go to a couple other areas which have some very interesting different like creatures and people, and I don't know, I just loved it. I almost cried at the end of this. It was really, really wonderful and well done. And if you like the King Arthur retelling or just retellings in general, I would pick this one up. And it's a standalone too, which standalone fantasies that I really enjoy are hard to come by. So I highly recommend this one. It was my favorite out of all 3 months, I would say. So that's kind of a run through of what I read in the last few months. And then, gosh, I guess it's August, so we'll have another one of these in October probably to kind of wrap up the third quarter. But let's run through some of the different numbery stats type stuff here. So I did end up listening to 7 audiobooks. 7 audiobooks. And then 4 of my books I read either physically or as an ebook. So definitely when I'm slumping, I feel like a lot of times audiobooks are a little easier to listen to and just kind of have something versus sitting down to read. I just realized my dishwasher's been going through this entire video, and you guys probably are hearing that. That's great. Let me oh goodness, hopefully you don't hear that too bad. My bad, I'm sorry guys. So as far as the breakdown of genre, I did read mostly fantasy books. I read 5 fantasy books, 2 horror, and 1 of each on mystery, romance, contemporary, and sci-fi. So I had, a decent mix, but almost half of them were fantasy. As far as age breakdown, 8 of them were adult, and the other 3 were YA. So definitely a lot more on the adult side this time around. Star ratings, I had 2 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars, 1 4 star, 2 3.5 stars, 1 3 star. So everything was like decently rated. I don't know why, I just was having a hard time really enjoying something. Like I haven't just hit that like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be my favorite book forever type of a feel very much recently. I feel like this whole year, there's nothing that's just like, I know this one's gonna be like my absolute favorite for all time, It's been a little rough as far as that goes, but, what can you do? And then I obviously had the DNF as well, so that was the 11th. And the last little thing we'll just kind of throw in here is authors of color. 3 of the books had authors of color, so that was not great, but I did look overall so far this year, and I am doing pretty well, and I almost got to my goal with that one. So I'm turning it around. So that's good. And then as far as LGBTQ plus rep, I did have 3 of the books where the main character had rep, 5 where the rep was present someplace in the book, and then 3 where I didn't see any. So mostly had some kind of representation. So I love that. So that's going to wrap up my quarter 2 stats and faves and not so faves. Don't know. I want to say disfaves, which doesn't really quite work. But anyways, that's where we're at. I hope you guys enjoyed, and you'll stick around and hang out with me more on my channel. And I will talk to you guys soon. Have an absolutely wonderful day, week, month, all of it. Bye guys.